welcome to Sunday service for Easter. So glad that you're with us, and we are celebrating today because Jesus is alive. Happy Easter! Yeah! Thank you for joining us for this Easter Kid City lesson. We're going to jump into the Easter story today and learn all about that again and what it really means and what Jesus' sacrifice on the cross means for us. My name is Brandon and I'm the Kids Director at Gateway City Church. Thanks again for checking us out. Jesus is alive, and we take this time to remember and to celebrate what he did on the cross. He is the real meaning for this weekend. Yes, there are eggs, there's candy, and we do these things, and it's fun, but what he did is the ultimate prize. It's the ultimate gift, and it changes everything, and it changed everything. He conquered sin once and for all, and we are eternally grateful for that. We are going to look at the Bible story, the Bible lesson. We're going to crack that open and learn about it today. Why don't we check out our new memory verse for this month? So let us do all we can to live in peace, and let us work hard to build up one another. Romans 14:19. We're going to look at a ton of different ways of how we can bring peace and be peacemakers in our relationships and in our lives, to our families, our friends, whoever that we come across. Proving that we care more about each other than trying to win an argument or trying to win a discussion. That we can be like a bridge, a connection between two people, and really help people out. Jesus is that bridge. What he did on the cross connected us with God.
The Bible, it's 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry that fit together to form God's one big story. The epic adventure of how he created us and loves us so much that he made a way to rescue us. As we travel through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, we discover people who met God and found their lives changed forever. Now, for an amazing story. Inspired by the entire Bible.
In the beginning, God created a magnificent paradise, and everything in it was good. He created water and land and plants and trees and birds and fish and animals. And then, from the very dust of the earth, God created a man called Adam. He created a woman called Eve. They were the first two people on earth, made in God's image, living peacefully in paradise. Adam and Eve were friends with God, but then they made a terrible choice. God had given Adam and Eve one rule.
You must not eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If you do, you will certainly die.
But the temptation was too great for Adam and Eve. They broke God's rule, and what was once a paradise became a broken world. People started telling lies.
It was the woman you put here with me. She made me eat it.
Brother fought against brother.
No!
Selfishness spread through generations. When there had been peace in the garden, now there was pain and sin and death separating people from their Creator. But God had a plan to make peace once again with the people he loved so much. Hundreds of years after Adam and Eve broke his rule, God chose a man named Abraham and said,
All nations on earth will be blessed because of you. Look up at the sky. Count the stars if you can. That's how many children will be born into your family.
So Abraham had a son, Isaac, and Isaac grew up to have two sons of his own, Jacob and Esau. And those two sons had children of their own. Jacob, who God renamed Israel, he himself had 12 sons. So God had given Abraham a huge family just like he promised. But God's people, the Israelites, were still lost and broken. separated from him, they still did not have peace. They didn't have peace when God rescued them from slavery in Egypt, when God led them through the Red Sea to escape their enemies.
Okay, great. But what are we supposed to eat out here in the desert? Sand?
The nation of Israel didn't have peace when God gave them a new law.
These commandments are hard. We want a king like all the other nations.
They didn't even get peace when God gave them a king.
The king's laws are no fair. We want a new God like all the other nations.
Nope, nothing gave God's people lasting peace. They were still lost and broken and separated from God for thousands of years. But God had not forgotten the promise he made to Abraham.
All nations on earth will be blessed because of you.
God still had a plan to show the people just how much he cared for them. He knew this broken world would never be able to rescue itself, so God made a way. God sent his son, Jesus, to bring peace on earth once and for all. Jesus grew up and he taught people love and compassion, forgiveness and grace. He healed the sick and befriended the outcasts. He saw what was wrong and made it right. He loved the world and its people so deeply he gave his life on a cross to pay for the sins of the whole world.
Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
In Colossians, the Apostle Paul tells us God made peace through Christ's blood, through his death on the cross. When Jesus chose to give up his life, he paid the cost of every sin ever committed and every sin that had yet to be committed. People no longer had to be separated from God. But in the 3 dark days immediately following Jesus' death, his followers didn't understand all of that yet. They huddled in the dark, afraid that they too might be arrested or even killed.
Who's there?
Early on the morning of the 3rd day, Mary Magdalene arrived at the home where the disciples were staying.
They have taken the Lord out of the tomb. We don't know where they have put him.
The disciples stared at each other in shock. Then, Peter and John lunged for the door. They raced each other all the way back to the tomb where Jesus had been placed.
The tomb really is empty.
There are the linen cloths they wrapped him in.
Peter and John returned home, still uncertain and confused. And Mary Magdalene, who had followed them, stayed behind in the garden. And as she wept, she noticed a man standing nearby. And at first, she thought he was the gardener.
Sir, did you carry Jesus away? Tell me where you put him.
Mary.
The instant the man spoke, Mary Magdalene knew immediately who he was. It was Jesus, alive again.
Teacher!
Overjoyed, Mary returned to the disciples to share the incredible news.
I have seen the Lord!
It was true. Jesus had come back from the dead. He's more powerful than sin, more powerful than death. And through him, we can have peace with God and work toward peace with others as God intended from the very beginning.
So it's like this. All of history, every moment of God's story led up to the life, death, and resurrection of God's Son, Jesus. Sin separated people from God. That was a problem that we couldn't fix. So God sent his Son, Jesus. And after Jesus' death, he beat sin. And after that, he beat death itself. So I guess you could say that Jesus was kind of like a bridge between people and God. That made it possible for us to reconnect with God. The Apostle Paul once wrote, God was pleased to bring all things back to himself. God made peace through Christ's blood by his death on the cross. Because of Jesus, we can be close to God again. We're at peace. Jesus is alive and he's made a bridge that will last forever.
So just like in that little example, that illustration, Jesus is the bridge. He's the one that connected us and God. He is the one that, because of his death and resurrection, removed that sin barrier, and we can now, and restored that right relationship, that we can now ask for forgiveness and live with him in peace, in harmony. And we're so thankful for that, and that's what we celebrate today. I hope that you enjoyed today's lesson, and that you learned a little bit more about the Easter story and what Jesus truly did for us and its significance. If you want to check out more of our lessons, head on over to gcchurch.ca where they're all linked there for you, or you can check it out on YouTube under our Kids City playlist. I encourage you to go check our last year's Easter video out, and if you want to play along, I'm sure you've seen a few of these eggs in today's video when I've been talking, when I was on the drums or in that initial thing. In that video, here's a clip, it's pretty fun. So, they entered the tomb, and you'll never guess what they ran into. Yep, in that video there were a bunch of these eggs, and I hid them all over the place. You probably saw them in this video as well. What you can do is count them up, see how many there are, and if you get the right answer, email it to office@gcchurch.ca, and I'll send an Easter package to you for the person that gets it first. I hope that you have an awesome week and a fantastic Easter, celebrating with your family today and over the weekend. Like I said, check out our other Easter lesson. It's down in this description box below. It's a pretty fun one. It's pretty silly. I think that you'll have some fun and you'll also learn something. Count up those Easter eggs, and we'll see you next time. Bye!